Hello everybody, how are you doing? Okay, welcome to a road called Paper Court Lane, I think this one's called. It's quite near Ripley and Send. I picked this because it's quite flat, so I'm going to do one of my shoe-offs. In fact, I'm going to go back to the original course. I did my very first shoe-off back in December 2019, I think. And I had very different shoes then. I think I was testing out the Zoom Fly 3 against the next percent, shoes like that, and the Adios 4 I think it was. So what I'm going to do today is kind of like a bit of a repeat of what I did last summer, testing out all the latest Adizero shoes that I've got. So I've got the Adizero Boston 10, I've got the Adios 6, and then I'm also going to try in the original Adios Pro and the new Adios Pro, the Adios Pro 2. So you may have seen recently that I put out videos on the Adios 6 and Boston 10, and perhaps wasn't overly enamoured with them. So certainly both shoes have changed very radically since their predecessors, although I've got the Boston 10s on now doing a little warm-up, and yeah, well, maybe they're not too bad, but they do feel rather heavy. So what I wanted to sort of test today is how well these shoes go. So what I do is I do a circuit, and then whatever pace I do on the first one, I try to get as near it to it as possible on the other ones. Then I look at things like heart rate, cadence, obviously pace, just to check I've got the right pace, and any metrics from the Stryd that I've gotten to see how they compare. Now in this sort of order, Boston 10 first is very much the heaviest shoe and very much the training companion to all these other ones. So in theory, this should get easier as we go through, because the Adios 6 is a lot lighter, more racy, and then of course we've got the two out and out carbon racers, the Adios Pro 1 and the 2. So also be keen to see how the 1 and the 2 compared. I've done one run so far on the Adios Pro 2 last night. I thought it was rather unstable, but it was actually more unstable when I was walking, so at pace we'll have to see. So I think these shoes are largely all designed as marathon racers. I'm going to try and get as close to my marathon pace as possible, so that'll be about 6:45 pace, which brought me in at 2:56 last year. Seems an awful long time ago now, it's just before lockdown in Seville. So right, I'll finish up this warm down and then we'll get on with the first one and we'll report after each one. Okay, so we're all ready to go in the Boston 10s, and here they are. You see I've got the Stryd on as well. So just before I get off, the actual start is about 100 yards up there, so I'm going to do a few strides. What's that going to do is get my heart rate up so it's at a reasonable level, because it's always a bit dodgy on the first one because of heart rate drift. Should feel easier on the first one, although I've got the slowest shoes in, well at least the heaviest shoes. Remains to be seen whether they're the slowest. But it'd be very surprising if a shoe that weighs 70 grams more than the carbon racer is going to be the one. But there we go, let's have a look, get into this. Okay, Boston 10 run done. Actually wasn't too bad, they're not a bad cruiser actually, although the last mile I could kind of feel that the extra weight was starting to wane on me, but I think I averaged just under 6:40 pace, around about 6:35, something like that. So that's a bit quicker than I was intending. So the problem now is, of course, I've got to replicate that. So I'll use race and activity on my Garmin, see if I can dial into that pace. I've now got the Adios 6 on, and already they feel somewhat narrower and lighter. And here they are. So we'll take a sort of full recovery. So it's about 100 yards down the road to get to the start. So I walk back there, just get this heart rate down to a reasonable level. And it's quite humid tonight, so you can see I'm sweating quite a lot as well. Right, Adios 6 then, let's go in this one. Okay, Adios 6 done. Okay, that was quite hard work. Didn't really like that shoe at all, actually. Funny enough, I think I actually prefer the Boston 10. The Adios 6 felt really harsh. You could just feel the Lightstrike. I think I actually did the same time, probably with a bit more effort, actually, but it was my second run, so yeah, interesting. Now I've got the Adios Pros on now, instantly gained about an inch and feel a lot softer. So I had about a 10-minute recovery there between them, full recovery. So I'll give myself similar just to equate the stats as it were. But yeah, so far the Boston 10 and the Adios 6, well, not perhaps the difference I was thinking there would be. Certainly the Adios 6 didn't feel like that was overly great at all. I think a slight caveat that they are a bit small for me. So I think if I had a size more, maybe getting slightly better toe off, maybe I'm just toeing off in the wrong place. The midfoot landing's just slightly forward of where it should be, maybe. Interestingly, the Boston 10 then just felt just a fraction longer. Didn't feel quite the same. Maybe my feet have expanded, but I wouldn't go different sizes in the two, but just be aware that the Boston 10 perhaps has just got a fraction more room at the front, but we really are talking about a millimetre, I think. Right, how long have I got? Got about another 4 minutes. Right, I'll put the camera down and walk back to the start and get this third one done. At least midsummer June you get a lot of light for these things. But yeah, interesting test so far. This should be easier, although my legs are now quite tired. I'm not really as fit as I could be. after this quad strain. So it's quite a good little workout actually, testing sort of what sort of pace I could do in a longer race at the moment. When I say longer, 5 mile, 10k, that sort of thing. Right, let's get on with this and see you later. And here are the Adios Pros on my feet here. Okay, Adios Pro 1 run done. I must say that felt so much easier than the Adios 6 and so much smoother as well. I think it just sort of actually sort of fit me a bit better. I think I would say that they fit about half a size longer than the Adios 6 and the Boston 10. Definitely a bit more room there. Just felt like it was a bit more natural of a shoe for me. So that was good. Yeah, I enjoyed the sort of higher stack, bit softer feeling. And yeah, just generally easier around. I mean, I tried to control the pace to be exactly the same as the other two. So maybe a second or two in it, but I just felt like that just felt like it was easier. When I was going round, I had the performance condition came up and it came up as +4. I think in the Adios 6 one, it came up as neutral. So that was interesting. My legs feel quite tired now actually. So I'm interested to see how I get on the Adios Pro 2, see if they feel any different. But yeah, a huge difference there in the Adios Pro. And so far the Adios 6 has been very disappointing. So a quick check on the heart rate so far. In the Adios Pro 1 I averaged 134 with a max of 139. Amazingly in the Adios 6 I had an average of 137 and a max of 145. So hugely more effort required in the Adios 6. That really is a marked difference. And the Boston 10 was an average of 136 with a max of 143. So even though it's on my third run on quite wobbly legs now, a hugely lower heart rate in the Adios Pro 1, so exactly doing what they're supposed to do. Keep you going along a lot easier. So that is very interesting. So will the Adios Pro 2 be able to match that? And here the Adios Pro 2. So run done in the Adios Pro 2 and I managed to get that fairly similarly in heart rate to the Adios Pro 1, but boy, the Adios Pro 2 are so unstable. It really was like rocking all over the place. I think it's this sort of cutaway. That cutaway there just makes for a hugely unstable ride. It was almost a bit disconcerting. That was fairly a flat loop and on country lanes where I could take up whatever path I wanted to. Some of it was a bit bumpy to be fair, but just compared to the Adios Pro 1, I felt like I was wobbling all over the place. I mean, I'm not really much of a pronator normally, but that was just ridiculous. So yeah, in 2 miles that wasn't okay, but if you take that to the marathon, your feet are wobbling for that length of time, then boy, that's going to be a real struggle. So it's interesting in this test then, of all these 4 shoes, the one that stood out for me by far is the oldest one, the one that hasn't just come out. So yet again, another upgrade where you wonder who they've been targeting. I think the trouble is with some of these shoe tests for the elite road racing shoes that they only ever use them on elites. And I do wonder if they get the feedback from athletes of my standards, sort of sub-3 marathon runners, rather than the sort of the sub-2:10 guys, because well, maybe that's more stable when you're going at 5-minute miling, but at 6:40 pace, 6:30 pace, I just felt like I was wobbling all over the place. I know Running Man Sam had said a very similar thing, so it's not just me, but I haven't seen, I think Ed Budd has done a review so far. He didn't seem to mention that, so I'm going to get onto him and see what he thinks. But yeah, that was just quite disconcerting actually, and I think that's going to put off a lot of people. So yeah, a bit of a red flag there for me for the Adios Pro 2. Oh, by the way, this is the River Way here, so just doing a little circle so you can see all of the sights and sounds at dusk on a mid-June day. Quite a nice day for running, but yeah, perhaps some shows I'm not overly fit, but my quad was starting to twinge a bit towards the end. So right, what I'll do now then is go back inside and look at all this data and report back in a flash. Hello everybody, it's a few days later and I managed to get my spreadsheet together. So a quick reminder of what I did. I ran 1.91 miles on this loop here, starting here by this little river, then going up here Paper Court Lane, which is very slightly downhill, coming back down Polesden Lane, which is kind of very slightly uphill, then down this road here and then back to start. So I did it in each of these 4 different shoes: Boston 10, Adios 6, Adios Pro 1 and 2. And I had a 10-minute recovery between each one, so largely a full recovery. It's partly because I had to be able to walk from my car to the start, and by the time I'd spoken to the camera and changed shoes and all that. So interestingly, I ran the first one sort of as I felt, and I did that in 12:38 in the Boston 10, which works out at 6:37 pace. So it was a bit faster than my marathon pace, actually between my marathon pace and my half marathon pace, I would say, but a good effort for sure. And I averaged there 136 heart rate with a maximum of 143. And when I moved into Adios 6 on the second run, I tried as much as possible to run that exactly the same time. So I used racing activity on my Garmin to ensure that I was never more than a second or two ahead or behind, and then I was just 4 seconds different. So I largely pretty much a similar effort, and the heart rates there were pretty much as you might expect, just a very slight heart rate drift upwards of 1 beat, both on the average and the maximum. So what was very interesting, when I got into the Adios Pro 1 there and did exactly the same thing, I did 12:39, so just a second or two difference between the other ones. And look how much that heart rate has come down. It came down an average of 3 beats, and the maximum came down as much as 6 beats. And that just felt so much easier. I don't know whether it's just partly because the shoe sort of felt like it was fitting me better, but compared to the Adios 6, which I actually found quite a harsh shoe, I was kind of really struggling a bit to actually, at the end, just to sort of keep going. I wasn't flat out, but I was certainly working quite hard there. It was kind of night and day difference, because even with fairly tired legs on the third run, then it was just noticeably easier. And interestingly, when I went to the Adios Pro 2, I got very similar heart rate, just 1 beat difference in average and max, but that was just such a wobbly shoe, as I mentioned in the commentary at the end of the footage. So although performance-wise it did exactly the same, just sort of the feeling on foot was just real struggle, and I was actually quite glad to get that 2 miles out of the way. It just felt like it was so unstable. So I think I'll be keen to do another run in that one a bit longer, just to see if that's any difference. When I looked at the other metrics, there wasn't really anything obvious to see. I mean, the cadence is pretty much the same in each one at 182, just creeping up to 183 in the Adios. Ground contact time pretty much identical. Vertical oscillation pretty much identical. Interesting, leg spring stiffness went down a bit in the Adios 6. That is a relatively lower stack, sort of firmer shoe. Although the Boston 10's firm, it's got quite a lot of stack. But I guess the big takeaway for me is that the Adios Pro was by far the best shoe here in terms of actually racing performance, which is the way you kind of expected. I didn't quite expect the Adios 6 to be as disappointing as it was. It just didn't feel like it was a comfortable shoe to me to run in. Okay, it may be half a size too small for me, but even so, just felt like it was a bit of a struggle. And then again, the Adios Pro 2, again, a nice sort of shoe, nice and reasonably soft Lightstrike Pro foam, but yeah, just that cutaway makes it so unstable. So I think for me, definitely preferring the Adios Pro 1, and it is about 15 grams heavier, so I'd rather take that 15 grams heavier weight, which isn't really much, than that really wobbly feeling. So more testing to be done, but I think the uptake from this, as you might imagine, is the Adios Pro 1 is definitely the fastest shoe for me in this particular day on this test. So if you've got any of these shoes, be extremely interested to hear your thoughts. Is the Adios Pro 1 or 2 your favourite? Have you even managed to get either, or are you thinking about it? I still think I prefer the Next Percent, so maybe another test is to actually put up the Next Percent 2 against the Adios Pro 2 and see how they shape up over maybe a different range of distances and speeds. But yeah, I think of these Adidas shoes, then the Adios Pro 1 is the favourite, but maybe still not my overall favourite. So I hope you found this interesting, and look forward to seeing the next one then. Like and subscribe and all that. Bye!